old album though, you know.
This new project, Biophilia, what you're doing is so different to anything that's been released this year. What was the spark, the creative spark that triggered this Biophilia concept?
Well, I guess for me, after I finished my last tour in autumn 2008, on that tour I had used a touchscreen to perform some of the songs, and I was excited to write with a touchscreen. So I started with my engineer at the time, Damien Taylor. We wrote some programs for that touchscreen, which basically at that point was called Lemurs. I guess it was still 2 years until the iPad would come out. And I decided, okay, wow, here's an opportunity for me to try to map out on a screen my sort of writing process. And while doing that, I guess that sent me sort of back to my music school years and sort of reminded me of things about musical structure and theory and musicology that I'd learned in childhood, and there were things that I loved and other things I didn't agree with. So I guess it ended up being me kind of somehow correcting that from my point of view.
Like a virus needs a body, a soft tissue.
There was a lot of excitement in the electronic world about touchscreens, and electronic music was breaking out from, say, the laptop years where you sort of ended up writing a whole album just with one finger on one mouse. So after 10 years of that, it was quite exciting to be able to become more tactile and have a touchscreen where you could basically play more with things by rolling them around and be more sort of intuitive and more sort of spontaneous, I guess. This album, it was really exciting to sort of to push myself in areas I felt I had stagnated with music writing, and by sort of mapping it all out on a touchscreen, sort of push myself into new places.
I mean, of course, a lot of people will be experiencing this album in the traditional form, you know, listening to it on a stereo, you know, opposed to being immersed within the app on the iPad. As a traditional album, do you think it stands up by itself and provides a different listening experience, but just as fulfilling?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this album is like all my other albums, really. That, like my other albums, have had videos and photo shoots and whatever, like visual aspects of them, or live performances. And but at the end of the day, an album is an album, and I feel the same way about this album. In a way, it's even more about the music, because you could argue that things like a music video is just an interpretation of a song, whereas an app actually is the visualization of the song. You actually go inside it, so it's a lot more about the music.
Am I right in thinking that you modified certain unusual instruments, such as a Tesla coil, to be compatible with a touchscreen?
Yeah, there were a couple of instruments, actually 3 instruments, were mostly, they were made specially for this project. Acoustic instruments like a pipe organ or a gamelan that can read digital information. So basically that means normal instruments, but you can plug them into your iPad. The Tesla coil, that's actually something that's been around for like 100 years. It was this guy called Nikola Tesla, and he basically made like a real lightning. Basically they play like bass lines on Tesla coils, and it's like a lightning, real lightning on stage. Basically a lightning that makes a sound.
Yeah.
So I thought if I'm doing a project like that, I might as well include that for theatrical reasons. And when we played Manchester, which we did last July, that was like all the kids that came for the educational program, that was like their favorite instrument.
You talked about workshops for children that have been taking place as part of this project. Is there any plans to develop that and take it around the globe?
We're going to play in Iceland in 1 week's time, and then we're going to like New York, San Francisco, Tokyo, and probably some other cities. We're going to collaborate with probably like natural history museums or technology museums or science museums in each city, and they will help us. We will provide the musicology programs, and they will provide the sort of sciencey side of things.
The video that introduces this project and your live shows as well, the voiceover is provided by a certain Sir David Attenborough. Can you quickly explain how you got him involved? It must be quite a thrill to get him on board.
Yeah, we sort of asked him if he was up for it, and surprisingly he was. I was really thrilled. I mean, he has been an inspiration to me since I was a child, and since this project sort of ended up having this kind of strange educational angle on it, I thought somebody who would be better than somebody like David Attenborough. I mean, there was also people who influenced this project, like, for example, Oliver Sacks, his gorgeous book called Musicophilia. Mm. And I guess what these two guys have in common is that they're really good at explaining things as opposed to be really complicated to the sort of normal person in a language that the normal person sort of understands. Mm. And it was really satisfying, actually, to see kids in Manchester play with the apps and see them actually just, you know, understanding the basic things in musicology, like scales or rhythm or arpeggios or chords, just by sort of playing with apps. That it actually isn't that complex. I mean, we're always told that musicology is really complicated, just as difficult for us to learn as Chinese or something. But actually, it's really simple. It's just more like learning how to read and write, really.
I'm guessing that must be quite fulfilling, really. You're educating a future generation through your music.
Well, it was curious because when I saw the touchscreen first, I was like, wow, now I can solve a riddle, and I can, you know, because I was not very satisfied with my music school when I was a kid, and I'm basically sort of making up the class that I would have liked to gone to myself when I was 8. And sometimes when you're sort of being really selfish and you sort of end up being the most generous, because while solving that riddle, I figured out that this is actually something I can share, you know.